Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of College Football UK. It is a new year, or it feels like a new year now. Out with the old and then in with the new. But as we let out with the old, we're going to wave a goodbye to them and see them out the door. Next week, we'll be ushering in new ones. And joining me in we're ushering the old players out of the door. Dead to us now is Nick and Sam. How are we, gents?
I'm all right. Hot and bothered.
Yeah, I'm all right as well. Very warm.
Yeah. It's getting to that time of year now where they're starting to
What is
jump.
it? What is it? Peter Kay says, "Like it warm, but I don't like it this warm."
Um, I like to think as well at the start of the In-Betweeners movie when they walk off the plane and they go, I'm hot. Well hot. Might be too hot. Might be. Um, yeah, we're hitting that time now where we've just been hit with a blast of really warm temperatures, and right now our US based listeners are going, cowards. Cowards, a lot of you. No, it's warm. It really, really is. Um, Look, there's no escaping. I know we're drafted out. I know this has been well, it's been 4 days since the draft ended. We've spoke about it so much. This is our last opportunity to talk about the NFL draft, and we're going to start looking forward to the future. So we will delve into what went on in this year's draft. We'll give Sam, particularly, you've heard mine and Nick's thoughts throughout the week. You haven't heard Sam's yet. So we'll give ourselves a chance 10 minutes 15 minutes to talk about that, but we will be moving on and looking at next year's draft prospects because it's never too early to start looking up to next year's draft. It's never too early. We might even do a mock draft while we're at it just to piss a few people off. Before we do that, we might have some pieces of news. Nick, do you have any?
I have some, but it's not high. It's not high level. Um, Marshall have chosen not to renew the contract of athletic director Christian Spears. Now, while that not is not unique to football and does cover all the sports that Marshall play, it does affect the football. Um, I haven't found a reason as to. He said in a statement that he was delighted to serve the educational, the college, the university, and you know he's. It seems that he goes on his way quite happily. Um, Talking of contracts, Boise State head coach Spencer Danielson has doubled his money, brand new 5-year deal. Rumored to put him at around 2.2 million a year. I think they what was it 12 and 2. Boise State were? No, they can't have been 12 and 2. 8 and 4, whatever they were. Anyway, obviously he's getting rewarded for a college
Oh, yeah.
playoff
Yeah.
berth, and yeah. Um,
He's
and
15 and 3 overall in his
15 and 3
leadership.
overall.
Yeah. Um,
Uh,
I think it's
and
not
news
sorry.
that broke.
It's
Go on,
not
You were right
just
as well. It was 12 and 2.
12
it,
and 2. I thought it was 12 and 2.
it's not just a good year in football in terms of results. He's also brought up a top 10 draft pick and Heisman runner up for Boise State, which obviously also has to be factoring in there that the how he's put
Which will get
Boise
them
State
credibility as
a
well.
lot of credibility.
So, and news that broke today. Former FSU quarterback Jordan Travis has retired due to injury. He sustained the injury in their unbeaten season in 23. Got
Mhm.
drafted by the Jets last year, um, fifth round, I think, and has never played a down. He's, and he's had to retire due to that injury. So very unfortunate. It reminds you of you know, the depths that the game can go to. And,
Yeah.
1 minute you're on top of the world, and you know, the next minute everything's gone, and you're considering where your next move is. So,
Yeah.
It's a tough one that because he literally just started his career in the NFL and has had to
Yeah.
basically walk away.
And
Although I reckon on one leg he's still better than DJ.
that's a fair point. But also, I think to add in there
Possibly.
was not knowing how bad this injury is, and I think actually this is something that we'll play into when we talk about the draft in a minute. Just gone. Despite that injury that has clearly led him to not play a snap and ended his career, he still went in the fifth round.
Mm.
Capital was still used on him, and it says a lot for just what we don't know. Even teams don't always know going into the draft.
Yeah. I mean, I think just before we get into it in detail, you look at one of your guys, Will Johnson. I was so surprised he fell, but
Hmm.
it was
Mm.
his injury and it was his medical record, and you know, Arizona got a steal. So you know, there is no doubt that injuries do affect players both at the top and the bottom level, and it's a reason why the season is so short, both at college level and at the pro level. The bodies just can't take the abuse.
Yeah. No, completely, completely. Mm.
And I will hand over to you for the Bill Belichick news because
Yeah,
that's it.
I think
Nothing else.
it's if anything else, it's something like to end the news segment with. Bill Belichick did an interview with I think was it CBS at the weekend.
Yeah.
CBS Sunday Morning, yeah.
Yeah. To which he was obviously the idea was going to talk about football, but the reporter obviously wanted to talk about his wonderful, wonderful girlfriend. At one point in the interview, Bill Belichick was asked how him and his girlfriend met, and then Jordan sparked up from off camera and said, "We're not going to talk about that one." Um, and multiple questions were kind of diverted, and it all turned into a bit of it turned into a whole thing because then the clip got released, and it's been this whole thing about whether Bill Belichick is being controlled by his girlfriend, and some people saying one thing, some people saying another, and it's got to the point where earlier today, 6:55 p.m. GMT, so we're talking 2.5 hours ago at the point of recording. It's released. We've had a statement from Bill Belichick saying he agreed to speak with CBS Sunday morning to promote the new book, The Art of Winning: Lessons from a Life in Football. Prior to the interview, I clearly communicated with my publicist at Simon and Schuster that any promotional interviews I participated in, I would focus solely on the contents of the book. Unfortunately, that expectation was not honoured during the interview. Unrelated topics were introduced, expressed to the reporter multiple times, and then they carried on. Um, Jordan, it basically says Jordan stepped in, clip's been shared, um, and that the clip, the final 8 minutes of the interview, don't reflect the conversation appropriately. I'm not reading the whole thing, but this is the new Bill Belichick that we're seeing now. This isn't the Bill Belichick of the Patriots days, the Super Bowl winner. This is a different Bill,
It's a bitter bill.
just a little bit of Bill.
Yeah, I think it's the way I see it. He wants to be in the NFL. This is just my personal opinion. He wants to be in the NFL. He wants to chase Don Shula's record. The problem is the NFL don't want him. So he's going so hard the other way to say, I don't want the NFL, even though he does. It's just now bordering on lunacy that it's just, he's trying to do everything to show that he doesn't want the NFL when really he does, for me.
Uh, Fair enough. I just think it's interesting to see, and that this whole clip has been blown so far out of proportion on all the different crazinesses that have gone on over the weekend because of it. Um, But that's about it, really. The main reason we've not had much news is because there's been something more important happening go on. Nick might say that they are dead to us, but we will be still looking and watching these guys play every week on Sundays. Instead, the NFL draft that happened over the weekend, we've had time to reflect on it. We've had time to really think it through and let it sink in. There are a couple of storylines from the draft I want to ask you about because I actually haven't got your thoughts and opinions on them, or at least not pinned them down on this podcast or ones that I've been in. But let's talk about the draft. And Sam, I'm going to go to you first. Overall thoughts and opinions on how it went this weekend, and how do you feel about how the Rams drafted overall?
Um, to be honest, I think the surprising one was obviously. I mean, if we talk overall, I think the draft as a whole was kind of, I don't know, a bit. It felt a bit underwhelming to me. I think I don't know whether that was just because of, we knew that obviously Cam Ward was always going to go number one, and then it's sort of the storyline that just seemed to be the whole of it, which I found a little tiresome. Was obviously Shedeur Sanders falling. Um, if it wasn't, I think if it wasn't for the fact that he, um, you know, I don't want to sort of say a bit of nepo, but the fact that his name is he's a Sander, I think maybe he wouldn't have. I think the fifth round was probably about right, but I just think it's the draft in itself was a bit. I don't know. I just didn't. I wasn't wowed by anything. I think that was probably the thing. Like there wasn't
Yeah,
anything really sort of. I mean, obviously Jacksonville trading up was an interesting thing, especially with what they gave up to trade up to get Travis Hunter, which was really interesting. But yeah, generally, I was a bit underwhelmed by the draft, to be honest. And I think in terms of from a Rams perspective, again, we managed to fleece the Falcons in sort of dropping down into the second round and picking up their 2026 first round, which means I think going into next season, obviously we'll have two draft picks in the first round, which obviously will come on to a lot of the rumors flying about for 2026 already. Yeah, I don't know. I think we drafted. It was an average draft because the thing is we're in a lot of the positions we're fairly strong, and the
yeah,
one position that I thought we probably needed to fix up the most we didn't go and get in a corner. And I think with all the rumors of us potentially trading to get Jalen Ramsey back, I think they're still sort of circulating now. So yeah, I think there was some okay picks. I mean, we took Terrence Ferguson, which we needed at tight end. We took a D tackle. We traded up to get a defensive tackle, which again I thought was a bit bizarre, given the fact that it's probably our strongest position. We just seem to be adding even more into that position. I don't know if it's something to do with the way that Shula plays his. He likes a 5-3 offense,
yeah,
defense. So I don't know whether a 5-2 defense. Sorry. So I don't know if maybe that's why. When he's just planning on basically just rushing the shit out of everything, and hoping that we just basically don't allow anyone to do anything on the front.
yeah,
Um, and then just sacking off having defensive backs all together and just hoping and praying that we just stop them throwing in the first place. Um,
hmm,
but yeah, it was just for me. It was just a very underwhelming draft, and to be honest, for me, it summed up. I think the general, I suppose, big player draft class that we sometimes get to see. I think there was a lot of, you know, very very good pieces, but very few like wild cards for me. But
yeah.
I didn't watch much of it 'cause I have a child, so I went to sleep at a very early time.
Um, no, fair enough. That's what I mean. The Lions did something similar. I was crying out for an edge rusher for months, and then the one thing we didn't do was an edge rusher. And then when did similar team, we've got quite a nice interior D line at the moment. First pick on an interior D lineman, fair enough. Um, So I understand your sentiments, and then how frustrating. I'm gathering you didn't stay up on Thursday. Definitely didn't stay up on Thursday and wait, but how frustrating that would have been. You finally get a first round pick after all these years. Then this year comes around and you trade it away, and then but next year, like
We'll have
buses, two
to.
come along at once.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, to be honest, I did stay up for a little bit to watch the first. I think I watched the first 20 picks. And I mean, I said from the start I thought we were going to trade down anyway, so I wasn't
mhm,
planning on staying up all that long. I just basically wanted to just see what all the hype was with the top picks, and then sort of go to sleep. So I did that. Saw the can't remember what the last pick was. I saw, but yeah, I didn't stay up to watch us trade down and make a monster trade. So, but
yeah,
to be honest, I'm happy with the trade. I don't think there was anyone in a position where we needed at that point. So to get a first out of it, I thought was a really good thing, a good sort of trading
yeah.
point for us.
I mean, you've said it there. We have to talk about it. We have to address. It's not an elephant in the room anymore. Everyone knows it's there. Everyone spoke about it. Everyone's beat it to death. But I do have to. We'd have to give at least 30 seconds to it. Shadar Sanders fall into the fifth round, amid also prank calls, which apparently Shadar was not the only one to get prank calls throughout the weekend. Amid all the craziness, we joined the hype. We got it wrong. Did you see the like? As I guess as you're seeing the first, you see him kind of fall to day two. Fair enough. When you see him still there at the start of day three, or at the end of day two, what's going through your heads?
I just thought there must have been something that, and again, it's I found a clip on by Joy Taylor, which she sort of released, and it just shows that the way that they rank and do all of the stuff with quarterbacks, clearly there is a lot that we don't see and don't get to understand in terms of
Yeah,
what teams want and what teams are after. And just, I think in terms of judging a quarterback, it's probably, for me, it's probably the hardest position to judge whether someone's going to be a good quarterback or not, because there's so many differing factors that can play into whether you end up being, elite or not. And we've talked to death about how, just because you're a good quarterback usually means you're into a crap team, which usually then has a major impact on your success. But I think I do think in a way that this Sanders being dropped down, it it brings it back to reality that just because you have the hype coming out of college, just because you are seen as like the guy or one of the guys, and I think a lot of that was media coverage because of Deion Sanders.
yeah,
And actually, I think realistically, if we break down Shador Sanders as a player, was he really anywhere until this season when they were talking about him being potentially being one of the top picks this year? No. So I think it brings back to reality who he was as a player and how teams saw him as a prospect. And I think we just need to sometimes be mindful that just because you share the same name as a guy who was a very good player doesn't necessarily mean you're a very good player.
yeah. Nick, what were your thoughts? I know you've kind of gone through it on a few occasions, but what were your thoughts on it?
Um, with regards to Sanders, basically, Sam just touched on it then. The draft process is effectively a three-prong process. You have your game tape from your 3, 4, 5 years at college, whatever it is. So you have your game tape, you have your combine performance, and you have the one prong that we do not get to see. The interviews with the teams, your visits, your pro day, the private visits you do. We don't get any of that information. So we're effectively, as people who are doing mock drafts or people that are following the draft itself. You don't have all the information to hand. Now, as I understand it, while his tape was average, there was good bits, there was bad bits. You know, he went to the combine with the attitude, I don't need to do this, I don't need to do this, which set some people off anyway. Then at his pro day, it was so managed that people could barely get what they want, find out what they wanted to. He still wouldn't run a 40. He still wouldn't do this. He still wouldn't do that. And then he went into the interview side of the process and didn't take it seriously. The Brian Dable incident. Brian Dable, had an interview with him, gave him some stuff, and said, "Can you tell me? Can you tell me what you do here?" And he went, "What's this? I'm not doing this." And he just said no. Now, it seems to me that he went into that New York Giants interview the same way his dad did, and his dad went into the New York Giants interview, and they handed him a big binder and said, "We'd like you to do this," and he said, "Where are you picking?" And they said, "Wherever they're picking." He went, "I won't be on the board then, don't worry," and he walked out. But that's the difference between a Hall of Famer in Dion and Shador. Shador wasn't good enough to do that, but he
Yeah.
did that, and that's what was his downfall. Apparently, so many GMs after interviews took him off the board and said not interested in him at all. So you reap what you sow, really.
Right.
When the more information comes out, the more you realize why this guy fell so badly. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, Brilliant. Within all that, there were quite a few other things that were going on the day. Few players fell. We're looking at, well, by the end of the day, Mike Green was still on the board. Will Johnson was still on the board. Jihad Campbell had only just come off the board. There were a number of plays, a lot of things still going on. But I think the only other big story of the night, which was on the Thursday night, was not who went where, but who came up to get them, and it was the Jags taking. It was the Jags coming up and trading with the Browns. Now, I was on the Patriots touchback at the time with our wonderful friend Nick over there, as that was happening, and we were all kind of talking about it there and then. Looking back, what I'll say one thing and then I'll ask a question. When we went through the Heisman stuff, all I heard was how Travis Hunter doesn't deserve it. Travis Hunter doesn't deserve it. Ashton Genty is the one who deserves it, and all that discourse around it, which fair enough. I said at the time, I don't care who wins it, both of them deserve it. All I heard around that time was how similar to Shador, because they both had that media thing around them, but it was Travis Hunter's he's just arrogant. He's not serious. He's just too arrogant. I don't care about anything up until the second he was picked.
Mm.
Every minute afterwards, I have loved nothing more than every video, every photo, every little thing about Travis Hunter that's come out. He looks like you've just not just put a kid in a room at Christmas or put him in the middle of Toys R Us. It looks like some kid has woke up in Santa's workshop and been told everything's yours, right?
Dancing down the hallway and everything. Yeah.
Mm.
Dancing down the hallway, his little just every bit of his personality is coming out, and it's so fun to watch and see someone. And for me, I said this on Monday. The best thing about the NFL draft by far is getting to watch 32 young men on Thursday, and then the days after, hundreds. You're just their dreams come true, and you're watching it live, kind of happen in real time. Um, but the trade, Jacksonville coming up, we knew that one of Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter were going. We just didn't know which order, but we all thought it was going to be the Browns and the Giants. Then the Jags come up. Not expecting that.
No, it was very left field. I think it's like to say it was probably one of the big, I suppose, highlights of the draft in terms of, I suppose, what we'd maybe say is a positive. rather than obviously all the negativity with the whole Sanders stuff. But yeah, it was very aggressive. And I mean, there was a lot of shout before leading up to the draft that obviously Jacksonville is the GM is obviously from the Les Snead group. And there was obviously Les Snead can be very aggressive when it comes to drafting.
F
Um,
them picks.
yeah, and we've seen a little bit of that in terms of him them drafting up, taking obviously taking the second, and they gave up their 2026 first. Yeah, so
2026 first, 2025 second, 2025 third, swapped a couple of picks
yeah,
further back, and I think one next year. But
yeah, so it was very much sort of a fuck them picks feel, um, which I
I
don't
don't
think the Jacksonville are in the position to be able to do that.
I
But
don't know whether I agree in that sense. I heard this the other day about how it was too rich. It was, they overpaid for that position, and I'm like, but if you look at some of the trades that have gone on for QB,
mm,
what Jacksonville effectively paid for Travis Hunter is what you would pay to move up to get a, you know, franchise QB. Now, all right, Travis Hunter is not a franchise QB, but he has the possibility to be a franchise star for however long. Yes, there's no guarantee, but there's no guarantee with any player at any position. So I did think some of the people that were saying, "Oh, Jacksonville have overpaid," really, they've effectively paid QB price for a man that can play two positions, and for me was the best on the board in one position and the second best on the board in the other position. So I don't think to say you've overpaid for a player that can or has the potential to do that when it's okay to pay that sort of thing for a guy that doesn't do that. I thought it was a bit sort of like people getting their nose up at it. They didn't like it, sort of thing. But you know, it
I think
certainly fired the draft up to start with.
I think from my perspective, it's not necessarily that it was an overpayment. I just I don't know whether Jacksonville are in that position to be giving up those picks with all the issues that they have on the defensive side. Yes, okay, they've addressed a very big one in Travis Hunter, but do they have enough talent to warrant getting rid of those picks? And I'm not sure that they do. But like I say, it's one of those things. It could very well turn out to be a stroke of genius. We don't know until later down the line, and that's when we start talking about hindsight. So, you know, I think it was like I say, it was an enjoyable thing to see at the time. It was probably something that a lot of people weren't expecting, and yeah, I think it was a nice little bit of interest to what for me overall was a relatively I don't want to say boring because it wasn't boring, but just mm, sort of draft for me.
Yeah. Well, it went down as it's the giant least amount of trades that happened during the round in the common draft era, in three. Um, yeah, I get what you mean. Everything kind of there wasn't any point other than Shadar Sanders dropping. There wasn't anyone that you sat there like, oh my god, they've taken them there. What? Like that's crazy. And I think, was it you, Nick, who said, as you kind of got through the draft, I think it was you. You got to, I guess, probably the end of day one. You looked at the two or three players who had fallen and went, whoa, they've fallen. But then you go back through the draft and go, but I can't think who they've fallen, like, who's been reached on, apart from obviously Emiko Buka, was a bit of a reach there. But you can't really think of who was reached for, really. Um,
No, I mean a lot of the people that fell, with the exception of Mike Green, who fell for reasons away from football, let's say, every person that fell, with the exception of Shador Sanders, who we've already discussed, so excluding him, everyone fell due to injury.
Hmm.
You know,
or or
um,
Isaiah Bond for non-football relating
yeah,
weird
I will
reasons.
put him in the same reason as Mike Green, but
Hmm.
you know, Siobhan Revel, who I had a first round grade on, went in the third. Will Johnson, who I will have you know, Fletch, you said to me 3 weeks ago, wash your mouth out that you don't have him in the top 10. Well, he didn't go in the top 10. You know,
Injury.
um,
Talent alone is a
Benjamin Morrison didn't go, high either.
yeah.
Injury. There was so many players that fell because of injury that you can see why they fell, but you can also you can sit there and go, oh, he's a first, yeah, but you can see why he fell. Mike Green and Isaiah Bond are the only two that probably fell for reasons away from the sport.
Yeah, I think with Will Johnson's injury as well, I think it more was kind of came to light on just how bad that injury might be. It's something to do with his knee potentially being degenerative now, um, and how you've only got X amount of years on him before he's just done. End of story. Um, like I say, it was more just on the sense of you don't look at anyone in that first round and think, "Wow, you should not have been picked in the first round, or you shouldn't be there. You don't have that
Yeah.
like."
I did
It's
I
it's
did
all
find I
so
did
good.
find the pick of the Falcons trading up for James Pierce. I found bizarre, like giving away a first round pick for him. I mean, yeah, I know that they got I think a third instead of a fourth and that, but I find that more bizarre because it's the Falcons didn't need to necessarily trade up for him. I think he probably would have been there maybe the start of the second,
It's
unless they'd heard things that he was potentially going to go before that. But I don't know. I found that to give up a first for him seemed a bit odd. But I'm
it
not saying that it was a bad pick at that time. I just think it's an odd thing for them to do.
it's not an NFL draft without some Arthur Blank, Terry Font, no fuckery. I think Chapman will sit there and agree with us here. The Falcons have to do some sort of fuckery for it to be an actual proper NFL draft. Like I say, it is like I say, it's more just along the lines of where I'm getting at is yes, some players fell, but we aren't going, oh, that was a reach. Oh, that was a serious reach. Oh, that was a reach. You don't see you could flip them with and it would be an infinitely better pick. Um, so it was just it was just one of those drafts. Everyone you kind of went, okay, it makes sense. The only other one I think you could actually turn around and say, whoa, hang on, was Colston Loveland going before Tyler Warren at number 10.
um
And in the excuse of not being a homer, I'm just gonna stay quiet on this next bit while you both talk.
I would only say the only reason is I think Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren are two very different tight ends. And I think the Colston Loveland style or type of tight end suited Chicago more than Tyler Warren did,
Yeah,
whereas Tyler Warren suited Indy. So I think that was more a sort of apples and oranges in the case that, or apples and apples if you like, green apple, red apple. It was a case of one suited one team better than the other one did,
yeah.
and I think that's just it.
I also think that I don't think Colston Loveland had the best of final college years,
No, he was
and I think
injured for a
that
chunk of it. Yeah,
yeah, and I think that would have played a part in terms of external thought. But we know from the season before how good Colston Loveland is. So I do think that had he had a similar season to the year before, I think it would have been a no-brainer. He'd have been the number one tight end.
and he was on pace for it. And do you know, I even remember you were asking me, Sam, this time last year, who's picking it up for Michigan this year? Who's picking up the
Yeah.
production on the receiving side of things? Nice. We both said Colston Loveland has to be the one.
Mm.
And he was fantastic until he went out injured. But that's enough, I think, on the 2025 NFL draft. It's done. Nick, they can be dead to us now. Officially, they're dead. It's done. They're gone.
I tell you, after over 9 hours of live streaming, what on 3 rounds thing, I'm done. I'm
Anyone
kind of glad that Sanders kept falling because when I was on my own doing rounds 2 and 3, I had something to talk about and keep going
Were
because
you
I
Mel
was really
Kiper in?
struggling.
and if anyone's watching on the YouTube, obviously the board has disappeared now.
The
Yes.
board has
Yeah.
The
disappeared,
board
yes.
has gone.
It will
Into.
come out at Christmas.
But now we look to the future because that's what we're about, aren't we, Jack? We're not about problems and players leaving. We're about solutions and next year and what's coming forward. We're not glass half empty. We're glass half full types of people looking forward to the future. And that future is the 2026 NFL draft because do you know what? Not enough people. Just so many people are asking for it. As soon as the draft finished, they said, Fletch, when's the 2026 draft content coming out? That's all we want right now. And I said it's on its way. Listen to the college football podcast. So while we get ready for a big college season, nobody needs big seasons more than the players who have the most to gain and most to lose for next year's NFL draft. Some of those players are going to be who I think we're going to kind of start covering now. Some of that may change as we go into the off season, go further through the off season and get closer to the season. But I've tried to think off the top of my head how I'm going to work this one through. We're going to free ball it, right? We're going to free ball it. Top prospects for 2026. Everyone's looking, right, okay, this is where I'm going to start. Sam, get ready because that question's coming your way now, right? Let's start with one of the most obvious things and one of the things that needs to be, I think, addressed first. At the top of many people's boards is a young man by the name of Arch Manning, who plays at the Texas Longhorns. Is Arch Manning someone you need to look forward to seeing at the 2026 NFL draft in Pittsburgh next year?
No, simple answer, no. He if he doesn't need to go in 2026. Bearing in mind he's had 2 years sat behind Quinn Ewers. Yes, he's played 6 games this season. But what does he stand to achieve going into the draft this year? Well, in 2026. I just don't see it. I just don't see it happening. It makes zero sense for him to only spend a single year as the starting quarterback to then go into the draft. I just think that, we've heard so much about, how, especially like, I mean, we talk about someone like Tom Brady and his, and everything that he has talked about over the recent years about how quarterbacks are coming into the league completely unprepared, not really having the right schemes set up for rookie quarterbacks to be able to deal with and not allowing them to develop. For him to go in this next draft I think would, as good as he could be, I just don't think it is it's the right part for his development. He doesn't need to go this early. I think he needs to have 2 years, and I personally think he's going to have at least 2 years as the Texas #1 quarterback, which he will be, to showcase his talent, to develop his talent, and to develop him as a player, just
Yeah.
generally overall. I think he's got enough people around him. Obviously, we all know the family in terms of Archie and Eli and Peyton and all of that. I just I think there's enough around him that he doesn't need to be the #1 guy next year. I think for me, I think whether he goes next year, whether he goes the 2027 or 2028, he's going to be the #1 pick for any of those teams, for any of those drafts. So for me, develop your career a bit more in college, learn the game a bit more, understand, and especially someone like Sarkisian, who does run a very NFL like I suppose like a hybrid college NFL scheme. I think it's the perfect situation for him to be able to develop as a quarterback before going into the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I think he doesn't stand to gain anything by going early, but he has the potential to lose a lot.
Mhm.
He can, um, I think you talk about Brady built his career on the fact that he was drafted 199, and he made that he knew he didn't have the best skills or whatever, but he had that drive, and I think kind of like really touching back on it, that's the kind of thing that Sanders now needs to do. He needs to attach himself to some sort of drive and have the will and the determination to prove everybody wrong. But I think Manning's in a great place. He's not in a he's not in a college that are desperate to move him on
Mhm.
because they've got some a talent behind him. He's not. He's in a time of college football where he's earning reasonably good money.
Mhm.
He's not earning. Um, and I think he's got talent around him, both protecting him and giving him the options to you know attack the game. So he's in a great spot. There's no reason why he should jump the gun. And I think, like you said, he's got a family behind him that will put his best needs and you know, what his skills require, excuse me, ahead of anything that could possibly rear its ugly head, sort of thing. And you know, I think if Quinn Ewers had turned round and said, um, I'm not going to the draft, I'm gonna stay in college, I think he'd have had to go in the transfer portal because
That yeah,
it was Manning's time,
they
and I
they had
think
they had already stated that would have been the case that this was Quinn Ewers' last season
yeah,
as a Longhorns anyway. They'd said that, so I think to put so much faith in someone knowing that you've got. I mean, at the end of the day, Quinn Ewers was a good college quarterback, but to turn around and say, "Look, doesn't matter whether you're staying in college or not, you are not going to be with us next year because we've got this guy." That,
yeah,
in its own sense, must. I think it puts faith in Manning that he's in the right position and he's at the right place. That he doesn't, like you say, he doesn't need to be pressing the button too early and join. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, how old is Arch Manning at the moment? I mean, he's probably what 20.
2021, something like that.
Yeah, he's 21 at the
19,
moment. Well, he's 20. He's
yeah.
just turned 21. Actually, it was his birthday 3 days ago. So if you're watching this, Arch, I'm sure you're not, but happy birthday for 3 days ago.
Happy birthday,
Um,
Archibald.
but yeah, I think he's. We've seen quarterbacks not need to go at the age of 21, 22 into the NFL. He can wait until he's 23, develop a bit more physically, a bit more sort of understanding, and develop the mental side of the game, because that is, I think, still think one of the biggest barriers that I think a lot of NFL quarterbacks do struggle with. Um, I just think yeah, like I said, there's so many reasons for him not to go. I don't see why he would go, and I think it's. I don't want to sort of we've talked about Shador and Dion, and there's all the news articles about Dion Sanders. The relationship I think that you see with like Shador and Dion, it's almost like that pushy parent at football in England where they're like pushing them and pushing them. My kid's the golden child sort of thing, you know, where he needs to go in the draft now, he needs to be the number one pick or blah blah blah. You don't get that feeling with Peyton, Eli, and his dad, and I think is it Cooper. I think his dad is, and Archie's granddad, Archie. Sorry, um, they don't have. It doesn't feel the same in that sense. I think that they're more likely to, have that humbling element to it. And I don't want to sort of make judgment on people's characters too much, but I think that plays a part as well. I just don't. I don't know. It seems like he has he has a lot more sort of level headedness that he would rather develop himself before just jumping at the possibility of earning 45-50 million dollars off the bat, because it doesn't matter whether he does it in 2026 or 2027 or 2028, the likelihood is he's still probably going to be a top 10 prospect. So that money's going to be there no matter what year you go. It's whether you are ready, you are physically and mentally ready to be a quarterback in the NFL. And I think he has enough around him to be able to not jump the gun. So that's the long answer. The short answer is no, he's not going to go in the 2026 draft. And I've said this to a lot of Rams fans who have been like, oh, we've got 2 picks to trade up to get Arch Manning at number 1. It's like, he's not going to be there. Don't even be thinking about it. And I got told it was a hot take. Apparently, it's a hot take that he's not going in this draft
Um,
just because he's eligible.
yeah, so I had to run and sort something out. Right, personal information for 1 second. I started back at the gym yesterday. Forgot how just on fire my thighs are straight after getting up, so it took me an extra couple of minutes to get back into the room. Um, Nick, I don't know if you pressed on what would make Arch Manning come into the 2026 draft.
Yeah, we just touched about what he's got to lose, what he's got to gain.
Right.
You know why. You know the options that are available to him. We talked about how even if Ewers had come back, he was going to be entering the portal. It's going to be Archie's time. Archie's time, and the fact is he's got 2 years to learn, and he's earning good money. So yeah, there's no reason
Yeah.
why he needs to jump the gun.
So I have a question then, and not to, I think, for someone who's not going to be in the 2026 NFL draft, per all of our opinions, spending a lot of time talking about him for the 2026 NFL draft. So this is my last question on him, and then we'll move on to the other prospects. But let's say he has a stellar year, like an incredible. I'm not necessarily talking Joe Burrow at LSU kind of year, but let's say he's put up 3,500 yards plus. He has nearly 1,000 yards rushing because he's shown he's got the legs to do that as well. He's all athleticism within that family went directly into Arch Manning. Skip Peyton and Eli and went straight into Arch.
He's still
Let's
got the massive head though.
yeah, let's just say he does have that, and then Texas do well. What we all expect Texas to do, not only do they make the playoffs, he makes the national championship, and Texas win a national championship next year, right? His stock would never be higher. One more year in college football can only, and we spoke about this in terms of prospects going into things like the combine, all you can do is damage your stock. Would he then turn around and say, actually, do you know what? This is my best opportunity, and playing one more year in college might drop my stock?
I don't think so. I think they've got, as a family, they've got a plan, and I can't see them changing it for whatever reason.
And you know what? What would be better than going if say he does have a stellar year, say he does win a natty and maybe wins the Heisman. How good will it look if he does it back to back years? If he is going to be, doesn't matter whether he's in the 26 or 2027, barring injuries, because obviously that can change the trajectory of anyone. If he is as good as people expect him to be, that he's going to be the number 1 pick no matter what. Does having 2 national back-to-back nationals, I'm not saying it'll happen, but does that me that in itself would look better than if he did it once. Drop, it's weighing up the opportunities, I suppose. Really, I just think he's
Yeah.
like I say, there's a plan for him, and I think it doesn't matter whether he's. I mean, the thing that I think the big thing to remember this year, and we'll come on probably in another episode around how teams are going to do this year. There's a lot of new players with Arch Manning this year. It's not, it's going to be a different Texas than what we've seen because of, I think we had, was it 12 going this year and 13 go last year? It's the most of any college in recent, I think, ever in across 2 seasons in terms of numbers in the draft. So I don't know. I just think, I don't think he's going to have. He's going to be good this year. I just don't think he's going to be. I don't think he's going to be like amazing, and that's why I think he'll need that extra year.
I mean, look, not to piss on your parade there a little, because I saw that smile on your face when you were like, a Texas quarterback will win 2 back-to-back Heismans, 2 back-to-back 90s. That's what's going to happen. Yeah, well, Bryce Underwood will allow you 1 year to get your affairs in order, and then Michigan are coming for it. It's just one of those things. But right, okay, so going on to quarterbacks who will more than likely be in there next year, there are a number of them that I think will be interesting to look at. Some of them have different storylines and character arcs and whatnot. Obviously, Carson Beck has a very specific storyline following him from his decision to go into the draft and pulling out of the draft and then go into Miami. The last quarterback to do that just went as number 1 overall in the NFL, drafting Cam Ward. But there are a few other quarterbacks who I do think are better in going into this year. I'll just shout out Drew Allan from Penn State, Cade Klubnik from Clemson, Garrett Nussmeier from LSU, Lenoris Sellers from South Carolina, Haynes King, even maybe from Georgia Tech. There are a few. And also just throwing one more name out there because of the storyline they've got on their back at the moment. Nico Iamaleava. What out of the quarterbacks, is there any others that you would like to put a shout out to? And out of those, who are you looking at for as potential, not necessarily saying number 1 overall, but who are you looking at as the top prospects into next year?
Sam Levitt at Arizona State. He's on my quarterback list. Not sure. He's one of these. It could go either way. Me personally, I think Drew Allan is going to walk out as the number 1 QB in the draft.
Yeah.
I think it'll be Allan. I think it'll be Nussmeier. I think it'll be Klubnik. Possibly Beck at 4. But like I said, I've got Sam Levitt on my list as well.
Yeah, Sam Levitt's in mine. He's actually he's tied with Haynes King at the moment.
I have someone who I banged on about last year, who was a Heisman not contender to start with. He was one of those that was mentioned in the Heisman chat. Is Avery Johnson, who you guys are going to get to see in Dublin this year. Had a solid year. I think
are you going to get to see him in Dublin this year? No, Joe, that was mean. I'm sorry.
That was mean because I hope you have a shit time.
I didn't say that, Sam. I didn't say that.
I know. But yeah, I think he's going to be one. I think he was 2,700 yards, 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Bearing in mind this was his first full season as the starter. So good, fairly solid stats. I think he just needs to obviously kick on. I think he did also have, I think, 605 rushing yards. So again, and 7 rushing touchdowns. So they're solid stats for a quarterback. And, with the Big 12 probably again looking forward, it might be an interesting one in terms of the Big 12. He could be one to look out for as maybe a sleep. He's my sleeper. He was my sleeper last year. He's going to be my sleeper this year.
Yeah. Um, I do think Carson Beck's an interesting one though. I can't help but as an im right, not to get into reality TV kind of stuff, but hasn't him and his missus split up now as well?
Who,
That
Carson Beck? Yeah, he left her.
Haley Cavendish or whatever her name is.
Yeah, they've split up.
So all of that he went through and all of the whole he was with his girlfriend now in Miami and it's such an interesting story more than anything for me to see if it was worth it, I guess, staying in college for one more year and not going into the draft. I mean, I guess his stock wasn't exactly at its highest. He's had the injury, and we saw what happened to players with injuries this year. But it's an interesting one. Another one I want to shout out though is Miller Moss from USC. On my list is a surprise on my lists even sorry are a surprising number of USC players, and if in my head it just didn't compute with me before just how many USC players are genuinely very good going into very important years. USC could be a team to watch this year in terms of ones who could make a run at the Big Ten, potentially make a run at one of the playoff spots, and Miller Moss being at the center of that. I'm going to be keeping an eye on him this year.
I got 4 Clemson players in a list of 20. I've got 4 Clemson players.
Clemson are a really interesting one as well, though. This year, I was actually seeing Oliver Hodgkinson talking about them before.
Sorry, who was the only person that backed Clemson last year?
No one did, as far as I can remember. No one.
All right, nobody. Oh,
Nobody. Absolutely
nobody. All right,
nobody.
okay, nobody.
Um,
I'd check that. I'd go back and check that.
I wouldn't.
I would.
um, well, as far as QBs go, those everyone that has been mentioned apart from one is on my top 10 list. And to be quite honest, I probably should have updated my top 10 list because on it is, well, in a footnote is Arch Manning, and I think I've counted him as 10 when counting through them. I'm not sure whether, yeah, but all of those are in my top 10, and I'm going on now into what position do you want to go into? Running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, O line.
Um, I let's stick on the defensive side of the ball. Let's go on the defensive side of the ball. I've got 2
There's always one, isn't there?
defensive ends that I love in this next year. TJ Parker at Clemson and Ruben Bain Jr. at Miami, Florida. They're the 2 for me at defensive end that I really think will be, first rounders and should be names that we will get to know.
No, have you got Kendrick Falk in there? Keldrick Falk, even, sorry, not Kendrick.
Um, no, but again, I haven't got my list in
Right.
positional
Oh
order.
no, yeah,
I've
yeah,
just
true.
got 20 players of varying positions.
True. Fair enough. Well, I'm going to say Keldrick Falk of Auburn is in there as my number 3, just behind Ruben Bain Jr. Well, I would say TJ Parker also top as well, should say. Um, an interesting one though we've got coming through this year is a name is a name that hopefully is uh does better than his brother, Mateo Ugalele. He's at Oregon as an edge. That's an interesting one to look at. I think Yeah. Well, I mean, just seeing how Oregon do, I guess, this year as a whole is going to be a really fun storyline to watch. I don't think they're going to go or go away anytime quickly in terms of competing and being a pain in the ass for the Big Ten. But Mateo Uvalele is going to be a fun one to watch as well as far as defensive ends go.
Um, I'll be a bit of a homer and bring in Colin Simmons as someone to watch. I think he did only have his first year, so I'm not sure if he's going to necessarily be around for the draft, 2026 draft, but he could possibly. Um, I think he should be one to watch this year in terms of college and potentially one that might do well in the draft if he was to go this year. Again, 48 tackles, 14 tackles for loss, 9 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles. On a defense that was very good last year for us. So he's one to look out for me. In terms of up there with some of the best.
Mikael Kamara out of Indiana is going to be a really, really fun one because last year, I thought he was absolutely excellent last year. Coming out this year, in however that Indiana team's going to look. And let's face it, obviously, that Indiana team was kind of propped up and, well, taken as far as they were mostly by that defense, with all due respect to them. It was the defense that carried them that far. Mikael Kamara was central to that, I think. So seeing how he takes it this year is going to be really fun to see. And then I'm going to also offer you throw us a TJ Parker. I'll even offer you a Peter Woods from Clemson as well. That whole D line's going to wreck some.
I've got Peter Woods, yeah, defensive tackle.
You've got him down as a tackle. I've got him down as an edge.
I've got Peter Woods down as a defensive tackle, defensive interior. Um, the only other Clemson guy, as well as Klubnik and TJ Parker and Peter Woods, the other Clemson guy I've got is Avian Terrell, who's a defensive back, who's a cornerback. Um, Scrolled on my list in the tiniest writing. I've obviously picked him right at the end. Defensive end, I missed out LT Overton at Alabama because I thought he was going to go this year, and he decided against it right at the last minute. So
I'm thinking, just again sticking on the defense, we're looking more sort of towards the backfield. I know that safety is not necessarily seen as like a generally a high picked draft pick in the NFL. But
I know what
I
you're gonna say.
think I could see Caleb Downs being a very, very high pick next year.
I've got
I mean,
Caleb Downs.
he is. We talk about individual players and positions and the talent that they can bring. He is a phenomenal talent. I mean, you only have to look at sort of his impact in that match against against the Longhorns in the what's it called in the playoffs, where he absolutely just blew up the the last play that we had before we decided to award Jack Sawyer a pick six. But the impact that he had in that game was just phenomenal, and he is just. We talk about players as being sort of that step above everyone else. He really is that step above everyone else in his position.
So I split my DBs. I went corners and safeties as separate, and I've done top tens by the way as well. So I did just added myself a lot of work. Now, if I were to pile the two together, Caleb Downs is still top of my list. He's obviously top of the safeties list, and it isn't
Yeah.
particularly close. I will pile the two together, and Caleb Downs is still a comfortable little way at the top, just ahead of Malik Muhammad, um, out of Texas. So
Mhm.
the thing is, and I'll say this about Caleb Downs, and this is the last nice thing I'll say. everything I'm going to say here is going to cover any niceties you ever want from me with Ohio State going forward, right? Caleb
This
Downs.
hurts, doesn't it? This hurts.
Do you know what? No, not as much as you'd think, because as someone who kind of love and appreciate football, even if it's done for the evil of the world,
Okay.
good football is still good football at the end of the day. And I look at players. I look at players like Brian Branch, for example, and how he's taken to the league as both someone who can play both safety and corner. And they primarily put him at safety, but he works in so many different packages because he's an intelligent player who can read the game, and he can adapt himself to so many different packages and ways of playing that it's you could put him at kind of like a hybrid linebacker role, kind of a hybrid corner role, kind of a hybrid safety role. Caleb Downs is that, and he is so damn good at it that it's ridiculous. He, for me, may be the most talented or one of the top two or three most talented players who could go in next year's draft.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think he is. I just think he steps above anyone in terms of um, defensive backs. And like I say, if you want him to line up on the line, he can do that. If you want him in the backfield, he can do that. He can literally do everything. Um, in terms of other players, I've got Leonard Moore at Notre Dame. He's high on my list. I've also got obviously Malik Mohammed. We've mentioned him. Avion Terrell is another guy I like out of Clemson.
Yeah.
So again, another Clemson guy. Michael Taff out of Texas. Again, bit of a homer, but I do really like him. He's been really good for us. And the other one that I have, which is an interesting one, is Chandler Rivers from Duke. 3 interceptions, 9 passes defended, and 54 tackles, 7.5 tackles for losses. I mean, he's a corner, but I just think he looks like an interesting talent. And I think, if we're looking at someone who's maybe at a team that's not necessarily at the top, I think he's an interesting one. Who, you know, he's a solid corner. And I think he could be an interesting one in terms of as a deep, deep choices in terms of maybe someone who might stand out for those lesser so teams.
I think when we talk about, they talk about QBs and wide receivers, and you talk about the flair players in a football team, but you must never forget the big guys. We've just seen Will Campbell go number 4, and he will cover Drake May's backside quite well. Let's talk about the big guys up front. I've got Caden Proctor out of Alabama. I've got Spencer Fano out of Utah. I've got Francis Magoa out of Miami. And I've got Jake Slaughter. I love that name. Jake Slaughter out of Florida. They are names up front, big guys up front that will go, that will be, I think might be for, I expect them to be first rounders.
Right. Sorry, can you repeat some of those names again? I was getting my O-line list up. Sorry.
All right. Caden Proctor
Yeah.
out of Alabama. Um,
Spencer
Spencer
Fano.
Fano out of
Yeah.
Utah.
Mhm.
Francis Magoa out of Miami.
Yeah.
And Jake Slaughter out of Florida.
Okay.
I've got
Uh,
one to add to that list that I really like, and I'm going to butcher saying his name. It is Oliver Vega Ioane. Hope I've got that right. Out of Penn State, 350-pound, absolute violent man of a size of a man. I quite like him. And I think another one that I saw, I've not looked too much into. I've not really watched him, and Nick, you'll be better placed to talk about this guy. But Charles Jagusa, so I've seen his name pop up a few times. I don't know what he's like, but he's on my list.
Yeah, I mean, again, um, I need to go deeper into each position. I've just brought enough players to, I've tried to at least bring one or two players to the chat from every position. So, I haven't gone as deep. Um, but yeah,
Um, you talk about £350. I mean, Caden Proctor's 369. That is a bit. That is a lot of man right there that someone's gonna have to try and move around this year. I'm gonna throw out Caleb Lomu out of Utah, um, and Caden Green out of Mizzou, as well as a couple of names to throw out there in terms of O-line. Um, I got confused for a second because when you said right, some of this is my work, some of it obviously I've done referenced off a few boards as well to kind of go to put my list together. Um, and it's right. I couldn't find Jake Slaughter anywhere. I was thinking I had to ask myself for a second. I've had to go back and find out. Yeah, he is there. He was in my list. That's not a slight at your list, by the way. That was just I can't remember seeing his name. Um, so that's but as far as centers go, Parker Brailsford of Alabama is the only center I've got. Then I realized why not, because I just wasn't looking at centers, and that's my own fault. Um,
he nearly came out this year. He's another like
yeah,
LT Overton. He decided at the last minute to stay. He's another one that nearly came out this year.
yeah. Um, yeah, so as far as centers, I think the only center I've got is Parker Brailsford anyway. Um, what else have we got? Apologies. Right, let's get on to some. Right, I can't believe I'm going to start talking about. Should we get some sexy picks again? We get some sexy picks. We're not going to look at the
Do you want to
linebackers right now.
do you want to put a bit of context to that statement?
Um, yeah, basically, if you're under the age of 18, please stop listening now. Um, no, let's look at some of the. I'll go back to the skill position. I say this in air quotation marks. I don't like that term, but let's go to wide receiver. Who you got on your board at wide receiver for next year, though, Nick?
I have Eric Singleton Jr. out of Auburn and Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State. They are the two that I've brought to
Auburn,
the table. Um, yeah, Eric Singleton Jr. out of Auburn. Is that not right?
Georgia Tech,
Is it Georgia Tech? Has he gone in the transfer portal?
hang on, hang on a minute.
I've got Eric Singleton on my list, and yeah, he's at Georgia Tech.
Right. So he may
Oh
have
no,
gone
sorry,
in.
sorry, no, 1 minute. No, Eric Singleton's.
No,
1 minute.
he was at Georgia Tech. He's transferred to Auburn
He's
this
gone to
year.
Yeah,
Auburn. Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
because
I had him down
George,
at
So we
Auburn.
were all correct. That's
George,
fine.
Georgia,
One of
Georgia,
us was
Georgia,
more correct than the others.
Georgia Tech I've got a new wide receiver who's also called Eric. It's Eric Rivers. He's the guy that's on my list.
Um, but it was one of those. So just to kind of thought, I was like, when going through it again, obviously, well, we've seen Eric Singleton this year anyway. But I was going, I've seen Eric Singleton Jr. I've watched him live and in person and up front. I was there at Dublin last year when he was playing. But I did, and he even transferred in December as well. That's bad. That should have been on top of that. Well, it's probably been mentioned on this podcast. Um, just obviously was not paying attention to whoever would have told me that
I'll check my
information.
December notes. Hang on.
Um,
Ugh.
sorry, who else did you have on there as well with Eric
They were
Singleton?
they were the two, and like I said, I tried to bring two to it for every. So
Yeah.
they were the only two I had listed at wide receiver.
Um, right. So for we are aware of the concept of things like yin and yang. Um, we are aware of the concept of things like gravity, what goes up must come down. And for every action, there's an equal and positive reaction. Well, I've just praised Ohio State and an Ohio State player. We're gonna have that equal and positive reaction now. Carnell Tate is overrated going into this draft. Uh, I've seen him on a number as number one on a few boards. I don't have him as number one. I have him as like about five, maybe six. Um, just want to throw that one out there. Mackay Lemon out of USC is is my top receiver on my board, followed by Zachariah Branch. Antonio Williams is up there out of Clemson. Eugene Wilson, I really like Eugene Wilson, and Nick Harbour. I think but with Zachariah, so some of them as well though. You look at Zachariah Branch, Nick Harbour, Eugene Wilson, and even if you look at adding Kevin Conception, I don't like. I think this year is watch the SEC for receivers. It's going to be a very, very exciting year for receivers. And then throw in, I know it's not in the draft next year, but that the kid for Alabama who was crushing it this year, he was a freshman. Um,
That 17-year-old.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's an exciting year to watch some SEC receivers.
Ooh.
Um, I even have towards the end there. Now, he's not here with us right now, unfortunately, because this was the only position I think I've got an FSU player. Uh, and I was tossed up between Hakeem Williams and Deuce Robinson from FSU in my
Well, you
top
did better
10.
than me because I don't have an FSU player.
To be fair, I think I went a lot deeper and further than you in positional depth. Um,
Yeah.
so by yeah, just by law of averages, I would have got one in there at some point. Um, but yeah, so we've got one of them running back. Can I tell you who's top on my list there at running back, Nick?
Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame.
Yes, Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame, followed by Mackay Hughes out of Tulane. It's an all Nick affair, my running back list.
Oh
We've got
well.
Tulane and Notre Dame.
Oh. Well, I've got
Just,
Jeremiah
just,
Love.
just to say, Mackay Hughes is no longer at Tulane. He's moved to Oregon.
Right, so I need to update where I'm getting my information from. Um, Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, the only reason I know that is because he is actually on my board as my one of my highest picks for this year, um, along with Jeremiah Love. And in terms of someone who I think's a Brad, I think he's just come into the college football, but Gideon Davidson at Clemson is a freshman who it looks like potentially five-star recruit could be starting for Clemson in his freshman year as starting running back. So he's one to
Yeah.
look out for.
Does he keep losing his Bible? Yeah, every time you go into a hotel, there's a Bible there left by the Gideons. Is it his Bible that he's left?
I didn't know it was by the Gideons. That's why that joke went straight over my head.
As
So now we
silence came me, I thought I have to explain this joke. This one's gone wrong. This
so
one's gone
now we
somewhere.
know that Sam doesn't read the Bible that's left in his hotel room.
I do know.
Um,
Oh.
I'm just gonna leave that one there. I'm not gonna get any further on that one. The
But
also want to throw out, by the way, Jaden Ott of Oklahoma and Nicholas Singleton of Penn State. But there is one other player I kind of want to just give a little shout out to. He's number 9 on my board in Miami by the name of Mark Fletcher Jr. Right, and the only reason that he is on my list as much as he is because my father goes by the name of Mark Fletcher. So in a roundabout way, I am Mark Fletcher Jr. and my brothers and sisters are Mark Fletcher Jr. So I do find it a little bit funny, and I'll be keeping an eye on that one just for the fun of it. Um, but other than that, like
Question
I'm
is, I think it's who's your favorite? This is above everybody else. Is it Caleb Downs? Who's your no? I'm. It's hard to say who's your number one because you don't know who's picking number one. You don't know what their needs are. But across the board, standing out above everybody, i.e., no matter who. For example, the Travis Hunter, the guy that no matter who you are, if you are picking number one, you are taking this guy. Who do you think is your number one guy?
um
Caleb Downs for me. I rate him really highly, and I think it's for me, it's just one of those players where he's in a position which I do think safety gets overlooked a lot in the draft, along with a few other positions. Um, but I just think that, like you say, he's so versatile that he can be packaged up in any sort of defensive setup, and I think he will succeed. And I don't think there's many players you can say that about. Um, but that's just that's for me, that's who I would go with if Arch Manning was not going. If Arch Manning was going in the 2026 draft, he would be my number one, but he's not,
yeah.
so it has to be Caleb Downs for me.
So I'm going to refrain from using the word favorite. I'm just going who I think is the best player. It's Caleb Downs. Without a shadow of a doubt, it's Caleb Downs. In terms of who I think would go number one, and yeah, granted, there are a lot of variables in there. If I was to lay a claim now, I think you play a game of probabilities. I'll play the game of probabilities. Probably going to be a quarterback. Okay, it's going to be one of two people then. It's going to be Cade Klubnik or it's going to be
Drew
Drew.
Drew
Allan.
Allan.
Drew Allan for
So
me.
Yeah, I would say if you're going with who's going to be the number one pick, it's Drew Allan.
So I tell you what, in terms, yeah, I play probabilities now. I'll play devil's advocate. I'll say Cade Klubnik. Out of the two of them, give me. I'll take Cade Klubnik as the number one pick at the moment. But
But
like I say, in terms
like
of
you
who's
say,
best,
it'll
who's
depend on who's also picking because if maybe this if the Saints get the number one pick, there is the argument that they could go for Nussmeier because of the link with the offensive coach.
yeah. I
It's
mean,
his dad, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, so I think okay, right. I'm gonna put this. I'll actually put this in one of three ways, and I'll pose it to all three of you, all three of you, all two of you. Um, you've got it's this favorite, most talented, and number one pick. So I think favorite and most talented can be two completely different things. Um, my favorite is Caden Proctor. Um,
Yeah.
I I love a big man up front. No, that's gonna be clipped out of context quite easily. I like old linemen. I love watching old linemen. It's my favorite position to just sit there and watch. And when I go back and watch film, I really like watching him. Um, Caden Proctor, I think he's really, 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 really excited. So if I was to go favorite, it'd be Caden Proctor. If I was to go most talented, it'd be Caleb Downs. If I was to go who I think would be number one, I'll stick with Cade Klubnik.
So I have a question. Has a safety ever been drafted number one
No,
in the NFL?
I'm gonna say no.
You'd be wrong.
I was going to say, isn't there been one?
There has been one.
It was it. And when?
It was. I've just had a look because we were talking. Everyone's Caleb Downs, and I was like, I don't remember a safety. Gary Glick in
Oh, that's close.
1956.
I did think you were going to say someone else then.
Gary Glick in 1956 is the only safety, or is the only defensive back ever to be selected number one in the NFL draft.
And what year was that?
19,
56.
1956.
70 years
Oh,
later. Good
there you
Caleb
go.
Downs run it back.
I'm just
Um,
having a look and see if he actually, it's probably a different time back there where they were just backs rather than safeties or cornerbacks as they are now. Just
sounds
wondered
good.
if he was definitely a back or if he was a safety.
Yeah. Sam, tell me more about Anthony Hill Jr., linebacker, because he's the only linebacker I've got on this list.
The the one that's sort of like an edge
Yeah, he's a
linebacker.
hybrid, like Jalen Walker, he's this new style hybrid linebacker slash defensive end, can do two jobs.
Yeah, I mean he had a good season for us. I think again he was sort of in the similar realms to Colin Simmons in terms of numbers. Um, I think it was sort of it was he's yeah. I think he's probably someone that's worth keeping an eye on this year. I think it's been obviously he's I think he's probably got more to offer. I mean, he had a very good season, but it's one of those difficult ones because there was him, there was Trey Moore, who's obviously a bit more like lineman, and then Colin Simmons. I think it's he did go under the radar in terms of his standout ability, maybe. Um,
Yeah,
but I mean, the numbers themselves are very. I mean, 16 and a half tackles for loss, 8 sacks, 54 solo tackles, 59 solo tackles, 54 assists, um, one interception, one forced fumble, four forced fumbles, sorry, and one fumble recovery. So he's putting up good numbers, um, and I think he might get a bit more freedom this year to be even more involved than he already was. So yeah, he's probably one to look out for. But it's
because I think that's the one thing with college football. You will have your own team that you're well aware of, and you will have the big names that transcend the weak, if you like, the Caleb Downs, etc. But you can't follow every player. You can't track every player. So,
mm,
in the case of this pod, we've got four main guys who all support a different team, so all bring a huge bunch of players, into the group that everyone's keeping an eye on, and then you've got that outer shell of players that everybody, knows. And I think it's really useful to have that blend of, you know, big amount of players that everybody knows through everybody else.
yeah. Um, One thing that helps as well is we're all in different conferences with the teams we support. It's not just supporting different teams; it's teams in different conferences. So it helps that again, me being a fan of a Big Ten team, it means I'm slightly more focused on teams like Iowa, Maryland, um, teams like that. Whereas Sam, you're in the SEC, so you're focusing slightly more on teams like Vanderbilt, Auburn, Georgia Tech, not Georgia Tech.
What's a conference?
I'm gonna say Nick, you're an independent, so you're all over teams like UMass
The
and things
Navy.
and the Navy, yeah.
too
Um,
too busy beating up the military. That's
Yeah,
what he's doing.
that's
fine.
right.
It's
Proud
fine.
of it.
It's fine. They're crying over the Pope for this year now, so there's also that one. So
I know one player we didn't mention. I think it's mainly because he's. I think it's unlikely that he's going to go in this draft. He could, but it's unlikely. Very, very unlikely. Actually, I don't even know if he can go in this draft. In terms of as a wide receiver, which he didn't mention, was Jeremiah Smith,
he
who
can't.
again is,
He
yeah,
can't go.
so So in terms of, I suppose, that 2027 draft, that could be a very tasty draft
Hmm.
So
because there'll
him and
be
that
him.
kid, so it's him and that kid from Alabama, both of them will go in the same draft. That's going to be a tasty year next year.
Mhm.
So tasty watching
and
them in
and
2026.
and Arch Manning as well, and probably Dylan Raiola. Like
Jeremiah
2020,
Love could turn around and say, "No, I'll go next year."
yeah. That I mean, you'll have. Was it? Did you mean? I mean, the 2027 draft could be phenomenal. At like that first round, I don't know about the rest of it, but the first round could be very interesting. Um, in terms of players availability. I
Um,
think I'm just looking at some of the the quarterbacks that could go in that year. Obviously, Arch Manning being the big one, but um,
does does Dylan Raiola come this season dressed up as Jalen Hurts?
I don't think he would get away with doing that.
No, no, wouldn't even at least try. Because obviously, if it's Patrick Mahomes has now lost the Super Bowl, so is he going to model himself after this year? Um, I jest, of course, Dylan Raiola. You be you, my friend. You be you. Right. Well, I think that's it in terms of plays for 2026. And do you know what? I'm really, really disappointed in myself. Um, because I have not come forward with any long snappers, any kickers, any punters. That's next on my list that's next for me to sort out on my list. Um, I might. Do you know what? For the hell of it, I might over the next week go 10 deep at punter kicker, and I don't know if there are. You can go 10 deep at
Some
long snapper, but I'll try.
kicker to look out for the next for the. I've got one, and then I'm shocked that you haven't actually brought him up because he's a Michigan player. Is Dominic Zvada
Yes,
or Zvada, however you say it.
Zavada.
Yeah, he's the only one that's available. I've just had a quick look. He's the only one on there.
But I mean, he's been excellent. He really has, and I like the fact that I did that little bit of an accent on his name then for no reason at all. Um, but no, no, he is an exciting prospect well, as far as exciting as a kicker can get. Um,
Yeah, Caden Davis is another one I've just picked out.
um, right, they'll be over here, won't they?
I'm gonna find a punter while we're here. Just for, I clicked on a website and clicked on punter, and it said 404 not found.
Steady, steady.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the point where all of these websites have that spend all their living days talking about high school prospects and all sorts. Go, whoa, whoa, chill out with the punter stuff, please, mate. We're not there yet. We're not there.
oh, here we go. James Ferguson Reynolds, punter from BYU. Uh, Max Fletcher, punter from Arkansas.
Do it for
Marshall
the name, lad.
Nichols, Marshall Nichols from UNLV, and Jack Stonehouse from Syracuse. Some mentions.
Oh,
Uh, and then you got Brett Thorson at Georgia.
can I can I drop in one more name here? And actually, I seen something that may have been wrong last week. Today. Uh, so have you seen the thing about Tyler Shaw today? Oh, and yesterday, the
Is
thing
it
going around about him.
the only QB born in the?
Yeah, he'd be the last QB born in the 90s to be drafted. Ladies and gentlemen, can I please not rise you a Cam Rising?
I feel old.
Cam Rising is still in college football, and Cam Rising's about 43 years old at this point.
Uh,
if anyone is gonna be a UDF, like, that screams UDFA more than that's not someone who's going to the UFL or the CFL. He's playing for like the Warsaw Dragons or whatever they're called. If he's gonna continue playing a career, but I mean he's still there. 13th of May, 1999. He's still there for Utah this year. Is it Utah he's still at?
Pass.
Uh, Red jersey. No, you're still at Utah. Oh wait,
Yeah, he's at the Utah Utes.
his wiki says till 2024. It doesn't say he's still there.
There we go.
Interesting.
Yeah, he turned down the transfer portal.
Interesting.
Oh, Cam Rising hasn't been around Salt Lake City in months. Former Utah quarterback technically has the ability to return to college, but has not exercised either option of either injury redshirt or either petition. Um, he has not entered the transfer portal and he went undrafted in the 2025 draft. His college career is over, most likely, and perhaps his football career too.
So I'm just staring at an article on PFF. I knew I listened to it on a podcast, which is why I've been trying to find it. They did a mock draft a couple of weeks ago. If every player in college was available to be drafted, and so you didn't have to serve your minimum term, what would the draft look like next year? And they've got Arch Manning at 1, DJ Lagway at 2, Caleb Downs at 3, Jeremiah Smith at 4, Nussmeyer at 5, Dylan Stewart at 6, Colin Simmons at 7, Peter Woods at 8, Ryan Williams at 9,
That's the Bama guy.
Leonard Moore at 10. Um,
So we've gone 10 down and still no Dylan Raiola. That's interesting.
TJ Parker at 11, Jermud McCoy at 12, Avion Terrell at 13, Jordan Seaton at 14. He can't come out till 2027. Yeah, that's the top. Yeah, that's the top 14.
Interesting.
I haven't got the full article, but yeah, I remember listening to it as a podcast the other week. Um, and I thought that was quite interesting. But yeah, so there, some of those players can't come out till 27. So
I
Right.
suppose before we do decide to end it, I just want to. I was doing all of some of the initial checks on all these players and flicking through numerous players, and found a guy who has a really interesting name. Well, his first name's interesting, called Fluff Bothwell. I just found it funny that his name was Fluff. Um, so yeah,
Brilliant.
the Marian Fluff Bothwell. But
do
he
you
goes
think
by
he
Fluff.
runs between the toes?
That's a bad joke.
Oh no, I'm working with Fluff here. Give me a break. I'm working with Fluff. Ugh.
But yeah,
That's another.
he's the Mississippi State Bulldogs running back for this year. He transferred from South Alabama.
I think he's got 5 O linemen, got 5 toes. Running backs tend to run through the gaps in the old line. I think there is something there for you to work with there, Nick.
Thank you.
Along those lines, I think there's something there. We'll see you next week. For
What's also interesting in terms of fluff, um, the player,
I've just seen Fletcher's face. That's made me go,
the
oh.
player, the only thing that's on his wiki page under his personal life, very, very odd thing, is Bothwell's family home burned down Christmas Eve 2023. That's the only thing that is in his personal life on Wikipedia, which is a very bizarre thing to have in there.
right, if anyone's watching on YouTube, I'm still smiling from the up. I'm now in a good mood. And it's tickled me that his name's Fluff. I'm not laughing at the fact that his house burned down. It's just I'm still tickled from the previous thing. It just probably looks really horrible that that's what I'm smiling at. That is a weird thing to just have on the
On your personal thing is that your house
yeah.
got burned down in 2023 on Christmas Eve.
So in fact, that's something I want to look into. We've got a big
What? His
project planned
house?
for June. Yeah, yeah. It's a new true crime podcast I'm starting. Um,
All right.
First episode is on who took Carson Beck's cars. It's a very specific niche football true crime podcast. Um, do you know what? That's right. No, I'm not going to get into that now. But that has inspired me. It's going to keep me awake all night now. But
Yeah, I mean, I've ended up in a hole of looking at um, funniest college football player names of 2024. So that's where
uh,
I'm at now.
but we did give our all name team, and that's something I want to do for 2025 because there's a couple that have gone. Major Burns, he's gone. I can't remember. There's a couple others that have gone as well.
Well, the some that they've got here is obviously Rowdy Beers, tight
Memorable
end.
factor still there.
Yeah, General Booty, Pig Cage.
Pete Cage, I think he's gone as well.
Has he gone now?
He's in the NFL. I think he's in the NFL now.
DeRealis Clark.
Is it Clark or Crawford?
What? The realist?
Yeah.
DeRealis Clark, wide receiver at Butler Community College. We're going deep.
Communicate.
Mobility,
Yeah.
DB for Rice University.
Is his middle name Scooter?
Parkett Titsworth, O-line for Ohio University.
That one's just really, really childish, but
I
that's
bet
the
he's
one
a
that
handful.
Parkett Titsworth. Something that I think is quite funny is Tiger Shanks, O-line for UNLV. Shittasilla. It's unfortunate. Dude Person, DB for the University of Central Arkansas. Storm Duck, that's a great name.
really is that one.
Fat Watts. King Large. That Chief Borders, come on. Someone's got to be taking the mick here. See if there's anyone. Dodge Saucer. Yeah. Now that is, this is a very long name. It's Juvensky Schlenbaker.
Schlem, yeah. I
Yeah.
remember him from last year.
He's German.
Major Burns. Panda Askew.
Can ask me
Bless
anything.
you.
Hans Hammer. Honestly, there's some really quite funny names. I'm going to be stuck in this.
I bet he lays it down, the hammer.
Yeah. Hans Hammer as well. Not just any hammer. Hans Hammer.
Do you know what,
Is it
Nick?
as big as Thor's hammer?
Bigger.
That's what she said. Do you know what? No, Nick, you're on fire there. That was brilliant.
I know.
impressive. I want to get one for 2025. A lot of the names will be the same, but I want to see what new ones are in there. So if anyone can make some suggestions for new names, particularly that have entered college football this year, please do let me know. Because I want to put that together. Sam, have you ever looked at some of the best sports names of all time, just in general?
No, but I will. I'll happily fall down that rabbit hole.
Right,
I
quick one.
started.
Quick, sorry. Fitz Hall. Fitz Hall at used to play for Crystal Palace.
Yeah,
English. What was his nickname? One size. One size fits
it
all.
was. It was one size. Yeah.
One size fits all. I remember that being on Question Sport.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, it always gets me when I like going back and watching on YouTube the Bradley Walsh on the chase having to talk about Fanny Schmeller.
Mm.
yeah.
Um,
And then she turned up in his bedroom on Michael McIntyre's midnight game show.
yeah, yeah. Um, just to throw some of these there for you, Sam. Pro baseball player previously called Coco Crisp. Um, there was a college basketball player called Longer Longer. Um, a NASCAR racer called Dick Trickle.
That's a good one.
Uh, the pro basketballer called God Shamgod. Um, pro football, an ex football player, soccer player called what was it? Wait, hang on. Danger Fourpence. Yeah, Boots Day, MLB player. Does anyone remember that? I remember this guy because he's turned up in a couple of pub quizzes I've been in. Wolfgang Wolf, ex-football player. Yeah, Dick
There's
Pole is another one.
there's someone by the name of Hot Rod Fitton. I'm worried about my hot rod fitting.
Right, this is perfect because it's so simple and works. Tommy Gunn.
Tommy Gunn.
Rocky Five.
New Zealand Williams.
Oh, Nick, you're gonna like this one. You're
Go
gonna
on.
like this one. Oh, pro baseball player. Uh, who? Well, it obviously wasn't his actual real first name, but used to go by Blue Moon Odom.
Fair enough.
Oh, this might be one of this Steel Chambers.
Yes.
Steel
Um,
Chambers.
Fabian Assman.
Some people do like a bit of ass.
Anyway, right, okay, this is the last one just because the actual fuck. But Chief Kicking Stallion Sims. So Chief first name, last name is Kicking Stallion Sims.
That's a mouthful.
That's what she said.
Right, we've devolved.
Yeah,
This
this
pod has
is
devolved into something else.
yeah. Before we go, right, okay, we'll end it there. Before we go, we're just going to turn around and give you the last little bit, well, the house rules that I didn't put in before. If you like the podcast, go and follow us on social media. Head to the link in the bio or the description of this episode. Go follow us on socials, follow the hosts, follow all of us. And then if you want to help us get through this long, arduous off season, because we're now in the stretch where bugger all is going to happen now until August, really. So come and get through the off season together. Uh, Join us on Discord. Come and talk about various different sports. We're right in the middle of the NBA playoffs, which is really really exciting. Um, I've been really. The Pistons have just forced a game 6 with the New York Knicks, which is that's been a fun one to follow. If not, absolutely like tearing my heart apart watching it. We're in the NHL playoffs now. We are in working our way nicely now through the MLB season. The Premier League season's about to end. The Champions League's coming towards an end. There's loads of sports happening, loads of things to come and talk to us about. So come and join us on Discord, link in the description of the episode. And it just leads me to say that next week we are going to start talking about, well, yeah, we've got to cover the freshmen this year, Nick.
Yep.
And also we've had a special request.
We do read our messages.
We do. We've had a special request to bring up a topic, and we're not going to talk about it because I'm not going to tell you what it is yet. We're going to open with it next week, which is really exciting that we've had our first official request for a segment. So that's
So if you have requested a segment, it could be your segment.
the one person who has requested a segment, it's your segment.
Oh.
But
And it's gonna be without saying what it is, if you've listened to the podcast over the last however many weeks, all we need to say is mean machine, and you should know what we're talking about.
But what this will also do is, if you're still listening, if you want us to talk about something, we will actually listen and do it because, especially now we've got bugger all else to do for the next few weeks, we're going to be starved for content. Apart from during June, where we've got a really, really exciting project that we've got planned coming up. But other than that, we take all requests on board for content, especially now. So
If you want to be a guest as well and talk about your team, then we'll happily do that, unless you're an Ohio State's fan or
Oklahoma,
an Oklahoma Sooners fan.
Or the Navy. We don't like the Navy either.
No, we like the
Or
Navy. You don't like the Navy.
unless you support any form of the US military.
I do feel I get painted an unfair picture here. I've never actually had an issue with the US military.
No,
You
your
beat
team
them every
does,
single
clearly.
year. That's enough.
Well, we can only beat what's in front of us.
Stop putting him in front of you. No. Right, yeah. So we'll see you next week. And we've got a lot to go to the drawing board for, and yeah, we'll leave it there.